Hello and welcome to It's All About Choices. This is where my guests discuss life and our career from choices we've made, some good, some bad. For those of you that don't know me, my name is David Barrow, and I've been working in IT service related roles for approximately 29 years. 2023 will mark my 30th year in the workplace. This is a career that started upon leaving school with very few qualifications and no more than a passing interest in information technology. I didn't really set out to do the job. In fact, I didn't really set out to do many of my first jobs. I wanted to be a fighter pilot, but colour blindness and a real distinct lack of effort and qualifications on my part got in the way. But what I can say is those 30 years have flown by. And during this series, my guests and I will reflect on the choices that we have made that have led us up to today, as well as our future choices. And we do this not just for ourselves, but because we think it'd be great to share these experiences to help others on their career journeys who may face similar choices to those we have faced across our multiple career paths. Each episode of It's All About Choices will begin with a period on my own journey, and my guest will be somebody that I first met at that time. Today, I'll be speaking with my friend and old colleague, Ricky Raithatha. Ricky and I first met back in August 2008. I offered Ricky a role in my London-based service management team. Ricky was absolutely excellent. He was essentially the missing piece of the jigsaw. And in fact, Ricky was so good that I felt my job was done. And I chose to move on to pastures new 3 months later. Ricky and I will discuss the choices that led to us working together, and I'll also find out after all these years whether Ricky thinks I left him in the lurch back in 2008. But that said, Ricky's gone on to have an amazing career. So we'll cover how Ricky switched from being an employee to a consultant and back again, as well as his decision to switch his career from service management to ServiceNow developer. If you are watching live via YouTube or LinkedIn, please feel free to ask questions or simply drop in to say hello. After all, it's all about choices. Ricky, it is great to see you, sir. How you doing?
Hi, David. Yeah, it's awesome to be here, and thank you very much for having me.
That's an absolute pleasure. So I've covered a little bit about your journey and how we met, but I'd love to go into a bit more detail. So we first met in 2008. I interviewed you for a role in my team. But I remember that IT wasn't necessarily your calling, and I wonder if you could give us a little bit of background as to how you ended up opposite me that day.
Sure. So, yeah, as you say, IT wasn't my initial choice of job career when I first started out. From about the age of around 11, I took a particular interest in science. So I'd always wanted to be a scientist. This kind of got reinforced by doing some work experiences. The first one was kind of cultivating moths and beetles for a week. And that kind of just led me on to my second work experience, which was um, either at a food science lab, doing some microbiology and testing different food samples for bacteria. On my last day, we actually found a case of E. coli 0157, which is kind of the one that gives you a really bad stomach ache
No.
and bad times. So that was kind of where it kind of began for me. Um, I then went on to university, studying biological sciences and with a specialism in microbiology, but found that university wasn't quite right for me. I had a love of PC gaming. That's kind of now moved to mainly on my phone these days with the advance in technology. Um, and then I also saw there was one of my good friends who went straight from school to work in IT, and he'd had a phenomenal career to that point. I could do some data entry. I'd done some work, bits of summer work, which involved that. So I thought this could be a path for me to join. Um, I I got first interviewed for my first IT job working at BP like yourself, but I was working
Yeah.
with with EDS
Hmm.
at the time, and my that first role was just moving PCs, so just unplugging them, moving them from A to B, and setting them back up, ready for the end user to use. Nothing more than that. That was actually a contract role to start off with, but not what probably we see contracting as it is today.
Yes.
Um, I've I pretty much got hired for my physical size, um, and
And if you could do
and
that today, I'm not sure you could.
yeah,
As in, would you be allowed to do hire based on somebody's size?
yeah, yeah. I don't know if that would be allowed these days, but it was it was purely for that. But as I found out after I started working there, the reason why the hiring manager knew how to pronounce my surname was that he was renting a property off one of my uncles. Maybe that had an influence, maybe not. I don't know. But one thing was for sure, my uncle knew that I had the job before I did. On the weekend when we met up at a wedding, he's like, "Congratulations on the job." I'm like, "What job?" So,
That's
so that was
fantastic.
yeah, it's quite interesting.
So that was a case of not just what you knew, but who you knew. Bit
Oh,
of both
yeah,
there, really.
yeah, definitely. And I think that's kind of influenced some of the choices throughout the rest of my career too.
It's fantastic. And so what led you to being sat opposite me in Cannon Street that day back in 2008? What had led you, to that day at that time?
Sure. So obviously, with that first job of just moving PCs was my foot in the door, so to speak. Um, Working with EDS, especially on the BP account, which was quite big. I was working on their Sunbury site. Uh,
Oh yeah.
yeah. So I knew about IBM looking after London, which would obviously have been new at the
Hmm.
time. Um, and I knew that I had more than just being a PC mover. So I learned and pushed myself to know how to carry out PC builds. In fact, I think I took over the running of the new joiners process and making sure that those PCs were set up ready for anybody that was wanting to join the company. Um, I then got invited to take part in the Windows 2000 rollout project across the site. That was
Sorry, when somebody says Windows 2000, I instantly
it,
just need
fe-
time travel back.
yeah, oh, it feels like a lifetime ago now, for sure.
Mm,
It
almost it is.
certainly, yeah, yeah, definitely. Um, yeah, so I did that when that project ended. I was well during that project. I was doing PC builds. I was doing some um, uh, auditing of PCs, but for mainly for some of the VIP users, because apparently I was a friendly person at the time. I don't know if people say that now, but hey, it was one of the roles that I
Sure.
was invited to do. Um, and then when that project ended, there was an opportunity to go permanent there at the time. Um, I like the site, I like the people, so I snapped it up and got taken in to do some VC support, um,
Mhm.
which was something completely different again, but it was just applying processes and creating some standards for the VC support team and helping that happen. And during that period, 9/11 happened. So
Mhm.
obviously the need for VC support kind of went through the roof at that time due to uh, people not there being restricted travel and that sort of thing.
Yes.
Um, after after VC support, there was another opportunity to work with British Airways on their Windows 2000 rollout. So this was going countrywide, um, up and down, working with British Airways engineering. Uh, that was an interesting and varied role. Got to meet lots of different people. Got to be out and about. Um, and quite a different experience from what I'd done at BP. Uh, Again, as is with projects and the size of EDS, that one came to an end. I I then came back to BP at Sunbury and dropped into the desktop support team, where I covered many roles during um, during my time in desktop support. One of those was being a major incident manager. One of those was being a cover for somebody who was a an IT representative in the business as well. Um, but it was the cover of for major incident management that where the original major incident manager went on maternity leave. So
Mhm.
me being the backup was naturally asked if I wanted to take on the role. Um, yeah, I jumped at the chance. I'd been part of the remote desktop pilot, which again seems such a long time ago, seeing as that's part of everyday support life. Um, and I found that I liked it. I had a good network around me. We first started off being the major incident managers for our local individual sites. That then went to a national level, um, except the London team that you were part of at the time, and and yeah, it was for me. I had the love of being a major incident manager when things were going wrong, and that's where I first encountered ITIL, and that
Ah,
kind of
yes.
got me into it. Um, I then was faced with a big choice when the contract for the service management side for EDS at BP was coming to an end, and so I had the choice of whether to go back to desktop support or try and continue being the major incident manager. For me, doing the desktop support seemed like it was going to be a step back, and that it was going to be a bit limited going forward with the remote desktop support that was quite successful. So I decided on my 5-year permanent anniversary of VDS that I'll be taking redundancy and moving on. I then worked with I had a contract with Serco um, in Birmingham where there was a big major incident management operation. We were a team of 30 split into groups of 3, and we would be looking after a handful of customers each. Um, this was quite different where you're working on a site with um, people from different technologies. Uh, that 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 contract came to an end, and I'd got married in that year, and I decided it would be a good move for us to come back south. And I was then out of work for a period of about 3 months or so, where I then got one of my favourite jobs, working with the NHS, helping them embed an IT service management tool upgrade, which was just going on at the time, but also introducing the major incident management process, the problem management process, and a third party change management process. So I started pulling in some more of the ITSM disciplines at that point. That was um, that was a fantastic job, and I quite enjoyed it. However, due to some medical reasons, one of them called sleep apnea, and financial reasons, the cost of petrol had suddenly shot up by about about 25%. Um, I had to make a change. Uh, so hence, I then started interviewing for jobs in London, which meant that I didn't have to drive, and also that where I could make the best gains. Uh, so when I ended up with you, um, working over at Fidelity. That was just 6 weeks prior to the financial crisis. And when the financial crisis
Right.
hit, I was I had a few thoughts went through my mind of, was this the right move for me? Because I was in a nice job, I was loving it, and to move to something where there could potentially be no job quite so soon after joining you there. And
It's
all of those,
no,
as
sorry, go on.
as I say, all of that, all of those choices um, were only helped by working with some really great role models to get me to that point.
Yeah, it's interesting because I recall just by listening to you then when we first met and I was interviewing you. Obviously, you had the major incident experience that we were looking for, but it wasn't that made me decide the role that it was the role for you. It was for anyone watching. If you're listening on the podcast, this won't make so much sense. Is you smile and you can hear the smile when you're talking, and a lot of major incident management is keeping things composed and calm, and not just yourself but others. And I remember thinking, he'll be good on a bridge call. He'll calm people down. He'll keep things moving. And also, it's only really just occurred to me in you kind of talking to us about how you arrived at that point. You know, your background around the sciences, I think, is probably something that leads you to what I know for you, what I know you for, which is your problem solving skills, your commitment to getting to a solution. And so, yeah, but just listening to you then, it reminded me of that first day when we met, and I was thinking, ticks all the boxes. And I kind of do this when I look at CVs, like, yeah, seemingly ticks the boxes. What's the person like? And I love the fact that was your journey to that point. Um, and so when we heard you, like you say, that the crash happened, and my role had always been one to build a team. From the point, as we talked about in previous episodes, from the point of view that things were always on fire in that particular organization, and until we started getting control of them. And I realized that I had the team, like yourself, James, Carl, Ali, who came in. It was like, oh, the team is here now. And when the crash happened, I happened to be at the time the most expensive resource, but it worked out well because I was able to move on, knowing full well there was a really good team there to take on the work that I'd begun. But returning to my intro, you've mentioned it slightly there. How was it? Was that he's in the church, or as I with the team around you? Was it let's crack on and let's make the best of this situation?
Yeah, I think the audio cut out there just briefly, but for your leaving, I I was a bit gutted because I knew that I'd enjoyed working with you up until that point, and I could actually see what we could do with the team going forward. But as you mentioned, we had quite a high functional team that you brought together, and yeah, we might have had some initial bumpy bits, but we all stuck together. We had each other's backs. We knew exactly what everybody was doing. We could we managed to cover each other. We would always talk, and we got through it. We got through um, that period. We got through the financial crash intact, and it was it was bumpy, but we were so solid, and we had such a strong team with Brian coming in as well. I knew that he had a a good relationship with the business as well from his experience
Yes.
and time with the company, and that kind of settled any anxieties that I really had about it. Yeah, it was really good. Things could have been different if it was in a less strong team, but that was absolutely fine. Also,
Yeah.
you may have been one of the first hiring managers to have left shortly afterwards, but you weren't the last. I had a hiring manager who'd left before I'd even joined the company.
Yes. Yeah. Well. Yeah. It's amazing how things work out. We've actually got Sandeep, who's who's just wanted to say hi to you. He says it's awesome to hear from you and thanks for sharing your story, and hello to myself. He remembers first meeting you in Cannon Street and having a blast during your time working together. He says it's been great to see your career evolve over the years with the choices you've made, and he agrees that you're definitely a friendly person.
That's awesome.
Thanks for watching, Sonny. It's so good to see you here.
I know that he's actually made the switch going back the other way from ServiceNow into the ITSM world.
That's right, and he's doing fantastically as well.
Fantastic job, yeah.
So let's talk about ITSM then. You've done the job to a great level. You've got great expertise in the area. I've heard a lot of conversations in certain dispatches recently saying service management is boring, and I actually tend to disagree. I've got my reasons for disagreeing, but I'd like to maybe not ask you for your reasons, but you've mentioned major incident management, and I'd love it if you would give an insight into what major incident management has done for you, or the sorts of major incidents that you've looked after that have been something other than boring.
Sure. As I say, I tend to agree with you that it's not boring, or at least the major incident management part isn't. I wasn't too enamored to change management, but major incident management was something that I certainly loved. So at Fidelity, when I moved on to doing a change management role, it wasn't for me, and I missed the whole buzz of running a major incident, of people getting together. Um, some of the major incidents that I covered were um, virus attacks. It was interesting watching the teams try and get together to get that under control. Um, data center fires, other types of fires with the electricity unit just outside the building. So some pretty crazy stuff that we've had to deal with. They've obviously with the financial crash, the systems were starting to run a lot slower because there were a high number of transactions going through throughout the time. Things like what do we have? Yeah, some data issues as well. Um, these were all supremely high impact, and obviously the urgency is to get things fixed as quickly as you can. Um, one of the things that I did during this process is actually you learn a lot from these incidents that happen. So I might not have been the most technical person in the world at that point, but I could take whatever the technical guys were telling me and then kind of put some management words around it, so that I can get my communications out. Um, one of the good things about major incident management is building those relationships with people. So what I found at one point, I'd be going down to see one of their stakeholders so often that they'd have a bit of a look of dread when I was approaching them.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
I'd get to his desk and it'd be like, right, this is the situation. This is what we're doing about it. This is what it probably means to you. But if you say that there's something different that's affecting you or how it's impacting you, then let me know and I'll get that communicated. But I'll keep you informed of where we're at each stage, which I think gave them the kind of the warm and fuzzy feeling inside to reassure them that we were trying to work on this as quickly as we could. But with each major incident, you would learn a key piece to help, which of what helped you to fix that incident. So back from one of my very first major incidents that I had, there used to be a regular issue around some Microsoft Exchange servers, but I managed to understand what the impact was by asking the technical teams the relevant questions by that point, because we'd had it a couple of times by then, of what the issues were, what was causing it, what could it be, to help them narrow down where the issue was so that we could actually get the incident fixed faster. And that gave me great satisfaction, kind of see that speed and the improvement in the times to resolve it. And then we took it another level forward with problem management, and we could then see that by applying some of our problem management principles, we could actually uh, cause a reduction in major incidents, and we were quite successful at doing that over at Fidelity.
Yeah.
And it was quite satisfying. So you get quite a buzz from
Mhm.
being a major incident manager. Um, you would, yeah, you there 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 are some times where you may um, like during the financial crash. I think I was on like daily calls going up to like 8 o'clock at night with our team in the US who were supporting the platform that we were using at the time. But then that that built a great rapport with the technical support team. That when they visited London, it felt like we've been good friends for a very long time.
Yeah. We've just had a comment to that note, and I'll come to the comment in a moment. But I think what you're saying is so true around, is service management boring? There's a couple of points that I'd like to kind of dwell on there. Firstly, is we talked about you and your background and how that, in my mind, allowed me to see that you were a problem solver, somebody that looked for solutions, and you've just explained so succinctly there how you did that during a major incident. But the other thing you've explained, and this I'll bring the comment on screen in a moment, is you've explained that this is a business piece. It's not an IT piece. IT may facilitate that practice. They may facilitate the resolution, but ultimately you need to liaise with business people to understand what the real impact is, which then enables you as the face of IT, so to speak, to then go to technical teams and ask them the searching questions that help you go back to that business person and say, this is what's happening, and we've got this under control. You can't necessarily stop incidents from happening. You can reduce the numbers, but if you've got that relationship when they do happen, it's so much easier to manage at the time in terms of its communication. And I don't know Reginald personally, but I believe you may know Reginald Miranda, who says that he learned a lot from you during his time as an incident manager, with one of the biggest lessons being to meet stakeholders and put names to faces. He says major incident managers do not have to be faceless, and knowing stakeholders allows you to know the business and work better as an incident manager. Reginald, you are so correct. And I think that was the good thing about that team that we built, is we had the confidence to go down, sometimes get a few pelters, some stuff thrown at us on the trading floor. But if you could arrive down there later that day and join in with the cakes, join in with the Pizza Friday, that was a side of IT that maybe wasn't always seen. And I think that was the stuff that held that team up and gave me the confidence to move on from that team, because I knew you were all good people and you were going to do a great job. And the proof is in the pudding. You absolutely did. And we've also got David, who's very happy to see us both. Hey, David, hope you're well, sir. So obviously you did that role at Fidelity, working in incident management and working across service management. But then latterly you moved from that permanent position, or from a permanent position, I might get my timeline incorrect, to contracting. For me, that's something that I wish I'd have done years sooner. And I'll cover that in a future episode. But how was that for you? What choices led you to doing that?
Well, it's quite a bit of an apt time for David Garish to pop up there just now.
Yeah, I'll pop him up again.
So I'd always
not rehearsed this, have you?
I was gonna say just at the right time, yeah. So yeah, I'd always had an idea that if you were a contractor, you were like somebody who was the elite of the elite at what you did, somebody that was the best of what you could do, that these people had some sort of superpowers or something to come in and make magic happen and that sort of stuff. And I didn't really think that could be me, right? Up until there was somebody that gave me the confidence that I am actually pretty decent at what I
Again,
do.
very, very appropriate timing.
Yeah, because I'm just about to mention him as well.
For those listening, David just commented, "Don't blame me," in capitals.
Yeah, yeah. So that was it was actually using Dave Gerrish's support by his IT contracting academy. I think I was on one of his first cohorts that did the program, and that kind of gave me the knowledge of what I felt that I needed to be able to do it for myself. One of my former colleagues had had introduced me to the hiring manager for my first contract as well, and just said, "Look, just have a chat with them." Uh, I think we must have spent 1 hour on the phone, and I was sat in a hospital waiting room with my phone hanging off the wall attached to the charger. Um, but I found that I had a really good rapport with the hiring manager at that point, so I knew that it was a good fit for me. But yeah, had, had I'd also seen that with some of the contractors that I'd worked with in the past, that I did actually have the skill, and sometimes I was probably a bit more advanced than they were at the time. So that kind of meant I could actually do it, and I jumped into it, and I'm glad that I did.
It's so interesting you say that, because I mean that for me this series is just we use my journey as kind of a vehicle to talk about careers. It's just a way of segueing in different people, different stages of careers, and so on. I think saying so I myself didn't become a contractor out of fear, I guess, out of a lack, maybe not a lack of confidence, but a fear that the jobs wouldn't come when I needed them, and I'd have to work harder than maybe I've ended up having to do to get those jobs. Um, and this particular episode isn't about trying to convince people to be contractors, but I think what it should be about is saying to people, have faith in yourself, be confident, be appropriate in that confidence, and do something for yourself. And that can still be for your customer, for your business, for your employer, but develop yourself, and that will send you on a path that hopefully you can do, but as you'll prove, isn't irreversible as well. And I think that's the key thing. It's not irreversible. You can adapt and move into different roles, in different types of roles as well.
Totally. I never stopped learning what I do, and that's been throughout my career. It is pretty much like you say. There's so much that you can do, and it's also just taking. Yeah, there are some risks to change, as there is with all types of change, but it's taking a calculated risk, and it just depends on what is right at the time for you.
Yeah, your family, finance, experience, opportunity. We all have to sort of take a mix and blend that, don't we, to get the recipe that we want for that perfect time. So, but let's talk about that then. So, you've actually fairly recently gone from a fairly long career, and I would call you a consultant, not a contractor. Where I see the difference is comes back to something you said earlier. For me, a contractor is somebody that kind of goes in to perform a particular role, and they possibly just do that over and over. And there's plenty of people out there who are going to test me for saying this. Where a consultant maybe develops a level of in intense expertise in a certain area and consults on that area, which is what I would consider myself as. So I'm probably now a one-trick pony, but a one-trick pony that's good at that trick, as opposed to being good at lots of stuff. Please shoot me down, anyone who disagrees. But I guess my point is, in your case, you've gone from being a consultant in IT service management to completely switching to a new type of IT or information technology career, and gone back to perm. So are you able to tell us about the choices involved in that?
Yeah, sure. So at Fidelity, they were looking to implement a new service management tool, ServiceNow. I was involved initially with the selection of the tool, and then when it was implemented, and as a stakeholder, and then when it was implemented, I kind of helped settle the pretty bumpy landing of it for a couple of weeks. I was working with the administrator slash product owner at the time to ensure that kind of they were being bombarded with lots and lots of different questions. It was quite a significant change in tool set for the company, and quite a different way of working. But we sat down. We were in a room for 2 weeks just to kind of help it settle. And I got to like it. For me, if I'm using a tool, I'd want to make it the best that I can for me to
Mhm.
help me do my work. And that's kind of what inspired me. After that 2 week period, I went back to my regular major incident management job. But again, I ended up being the cover person for the administrator to carry out those basic tasks when they were on holiday, or sick or whatever. Um, and that came with a lot of trust, to hold such a responsibility, doing that sort of work.
Mhm.
And over time, um, we found that I had a bit more of an interest in the tool. Like I said, to try and make a few simple enhancements that initially Sonny and his team at the time, they helped us to progress, but I wanted to learn it for myself. Um, so one of my favorite enhancements was to actually just update the label of a button. And that's still my favorite and favorite one to date. More the fact of it was a very, very simple change, but the impact of relabeling the button was quite big at the time.
Yeah.
Um, and then as time went on, there became big. We started doing our own regular releases on a monthly cycle, I think it was. So nothing too crazy, but enough to keep keep the tool moving. I then went on to do some admin stuff full time, and we were asked if we could trial bringing together my knowledge of the platform and our other JavaScript developers who had the scripting knowledge, which I didn't have at the time, and bring us both together to see if we could actually deliver some significant enhancements to help the company. That was quite successful, and then I got invited to be part of the development team themselves, which
Wow.
was a big big moment for me. I still at that point did not have any idea of any real coding by that point. But working together with the team and the support that we had there, they gave me a great foundation. And working with somebody else who had been brought in, a consultant who had been brought in to help with the admin task too. I see them all as my mentors really, to help me get to that point. Um, I then uh, eventually ended up leaving Fidelity. That the next role was actually another permanent role, but was kind of a stepping stone, and that was with a consultancy uh, that then elevated my experience of scripting to another level again, with somebody who was a great mentor and kind of pushed me to do things I never thought I could do. So today, I've now managed to be able to take that step into the contracting role that I did. And I've done stuff that I never imagined at the start that I could ever do, and it's awesome. It's just so good. Um, just seeing how I can help people build out their processes using ServiceNow as a tool to help them work better, um, and improve their work. It's just fantastic.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
It was a
Uh,
gigantic shift, and it's not been easy, but the yeah, it's just brilliant.
but isn't that the? I guess that's where some of the satisfaction must come from, that it hasn't been easy. You've challenged yourself. And I think if we go back for your career arc and we talk about those days at uni doing something completely different, I've already mentioned in my opinion at least, the will, the want to find solutions. And then, for me, one of the key reasons for bringing you on board at Fidelity was the smile down the phone, the smile face to face, the pleasant attitude, the way that you work with people. You've managed to bring all of that into a whole new career path now, and I guess you're almost post-termed gatekeeper as well, where you're gamekeeper, sorry, where you know how those processes get used, and now what you're able to do is enable the co-creation of value for others to use those processes appropriately, using, frankly, is a great tool as well in terms of ServiceNow. So yeah, I think it's immense what you've done. It's fantastic.
It really did help, like you say, with the major incident management knowledge. When I was working with the consultancy and we were doing implementations, I could actually turn around to their major incident managers, their problem and change and managers, and say, "This is how I used to do it because I have been doing these roles for this number of years." And I think that certainly added a lot of benefit and behind what we were trying to achieve with them.
It's fantastic. And before we go on to what's next for Ricky, I'm just going to see if we can just swell your head anymore, though it's all well deserved and justified.
It's going out the door at the minute.
You're not going to fit in the square that I've got on the screen. Angie said that all of your experience before becoming a developer has made you one of the best still that I've ever worked with, Ricky. You truly understand customer requirements and how the business works in order to develop the right designs and processes quickly and always with a smile. That's I think that's fantastic feedback. You want to get that on your
Cheers,
on your
Angie.
LinkedIn endorsements as well.
Yeah.
But it's true. I mean, that's the thing. I had the pleasure of working. We worked together 4 months, but we've always kept in contact ever since. And I've known in my world as a consultant, if I've got a bit of a question on something ServiceNow related, I can run it by you, and you'll always give me a good answer, one that I can use that makes me look like a rock star to my clients. So I thank you for that as well. And I love playing around in ServiceNow, nowhere near the level you do. So I completely get it. So to close, what's next? What you're thinking now? What's going to be happening next?
I need to be careful because my manager is probably listening.
A pay rise, judging by all of this, all of this acclaim.
That'd be lovely. Yeah, for
We'll
me,
start a petition.
cheers. Yeah, for me, would be staying in the ServiceNow world. It's a fantastic product. It's just only mushroomed in the years, like 11 years since I've known it. So there's always new things. That's what keeps me interested in what I do. The fact that I'm always learning. I think you mentioned earlier that I'd come back to the permanent world. A few factors for that was because of the team that I'm part of. We are and we were a great team. When I chose to become permanent again, I wanted to keep that going, but also the stuff that we're doing here. We're always pushing the product. We're pushing ourselves to what we do, and yeah, we'll just keep learning the product. Try maybe look at getting a few more ServiceNow certifications. Push myself up um, to get onto their architect program, but it'll still be learning the product and kind of trying to keep doing the best that I can do to help whoever I'm working with kind of achieve what they need to do. That's kind of it for me at the minute.
I love the way that in that explanation you still manage to talk about other people and how you want to help them whilst talking about your choices and your next steps. And I think that sums you up perfectly. You've talked about these great teams. There's a common thread. You were in them, and you were working with those people. So I think that's a fantastic place for us to close. Ricky, it's been awesome talking to you. It's been awesome learning about you as well from other people in the comments. There's a few people there that I don't know, so I'm glad that we all hold the same opinion, and I wasn't too misguided back in 2008 when I left you in the lurch. But yeah, thank you for joining me, and it's all about choices. It's been great to have you here.
Thank you for having me. It's been fantastic.
Thank you. I'm just going to close with a little. I feel like we've given Ricky some amazing PR today. I'm just going to give myself a little bit before I close. I'm hoping that this time in a week, my first publication, Co-Creating Value in Organizations of ITIL4, will be released. It should be available via the TSO Bookshop, Apple Books, and Amazon. I will be sharing links on my LinkedIn for those of you that are interested. But a couple of years of work is hopefully coming to fruition in the next week or so. Ricky, the last word must be with you, though. Thanks so much for joining me today, and I think it's great that you're doing these amazing things with ServiceNow and working with some great people too.
Thank you for having me on your podcast. It's been awesome listening to everybody's journey so far, and I look forward to listening to the next person's journey as well.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on It's All About Choices. Goodbye.